Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 1993 crime romance film, True Romance. Now, in my opinion, this is genuinely a gem. Like, this is a film that is absolutely worthy of its cult classic status. And it's a movie that each time that I see it, I really become more and more enamored with it for the most part. And I could definitely see why this is a film that has struck a chord with a lot of people. Now, before I get around to sharing more of my thoughts on the film, I would like to give a special shout out to Andrew for requesting this review. And if there is another film, TV show, or topic that you would like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to either my PayPal or to my Patreon. Link to both is in the video description down below, and I'll try to get your request as soon as I possibly can. Now, True Romance is a film directed by Tony Scott, who, in my opinion, is a tremendous, terrific director. He's one of my favorite directors and filmmakers of all time. And his work here is on par with any of the other films that he's done throughout his illustrious career. Like, you get the signature Tony Scott style here, the slick and cool direction that takes risks when it comes to the camera angles and the techniques. And it's just very dynamic and intriguing. And he is just, in my opinion, an incredible filmmaker. And he's sorely missed. He really is. And having his style coupled with a Tarantino script is so special to me. And what makes Tony Scott so great is that he's not only a director who can direct action sequences in ways that are consistently thrilling and exciting to watch, but he's also a director that can direct scenes just between two characters talking to one another, or scenes of people just interacting with the different environments or the different settings of the film, and make those into moments that are just as compelling visually. Uh, in my opinion, he's every bit as good as some other filmmakers from his time, like Walter Hill, who were known for the very stylish, slick kind of approach to directing in terms of how they handled the lighting of a scene and dealt with the shadows and dealt with other aspects of filming. And yeah, I just love the way Tony Scott directed this. It was cool, it was slick, it was something that was genuinely romantic when it needed to be, but also horrific and intense when it comes to some of the sequences throughout the film. When it comes to the various different characters getting stuck in really difficult situations, or getting beat up or getting shot at. And it's definitely a film that has a certain visceral edge to it visually. And I think a lot of that is something that Tony Scott brings to it. But there's also a certain sense of wonder, a certain sense of awe, and a certain beauty to it as well when it comes to the direction. So yeah, I feel Tony Scott did an incredible job directing True Romance. Now, the screenplay is by Quentin Tarantino, and I definitely feel it's one of Tarantino's better scripts. It's a very whacked out, twisted love story. That's really what True Romance is. It's a film that takes elements of a traditional fairy tale, where two characters fall in love, and then throws in some really hardcore violence and a very dark edge to it, as well as some dark comedy. And you get a lot of the signature Tarantino dialogue that's edgy, but also still really clever, like the Sicilian sequence with Vincenzo and Clifford. And there's just a lot that I really love about this screenplay. For one, I love how it opens up. I love how it starts at this kung fu film marathon where Clarence winds up meeting Alabama, and how what is initially something that was set up by his boss to make him happy on his birthday, with this call girl in Alabama who was paid by his boss to go to the theater and then ultimately have sex with him later that night. This whole sequence of events actually turns into a genuine love story where the two actually fall for one another for real, and they get married. And Clarence, because he knows that she has a pimp, he decides he's going to go and find the pimp and take him out so they don't have to deal with the pimp hanging over their lives anymore, and also so we can get her stuff back. And throughout the whole confrontation between him and the pimp, Drexel, he ultimately gets his ass handed to him, but he survives for a long enough period. Like he manages to not get knocked completely out. So he gets his ass kicked, but he's still breathing, and he uses that opportunity to shoot Drexel and his henchmen, and he winds up leaving. And you're thinking that okay, he just did that to really help Alabama, and of course, definitely to prevent himself from dying because he was going to be a goner if he didn't take them both out. But then you find out that he stole a bag full of cocaine that Drexel got from his employer, or his business partner. Now, that bit, I was kind of like, okay, what led to him stealing the cocaine? Because it doesn't seem like that was really necessarily the driving factor or the main reason why he went over there and why he did what he did to begin with. And he even held one of the girls at gunpoint, was like, get Alabama's stuff. And then he winds up not even with her stuff, and he winds up with a suitcase full of cocaine. That's one aspect of the script that I was kind of like, that's a bit muddled. But I get it. I understand. Maybe he saw it. He was like, man, this is my opportunity for me in Alabama to sell this cocaine and then go on and have a really nice life. And I like that it subverts the fairy tale thing where it's all like, hey, if we do this and we can, go off and live happily ever after. And usually it's something innocuous or something that isn't like illegal, but this time around it's a suitcase full of cocaine. And so Clarence has to find a way to sell it. He utilizes his connection with a friend of his in Hollywood who's an aspiring actor, uh, to set up a meeting with a friend of his who happens to work for this big shot, big wig Hollywood producer. So sets up a meeting with Elliot, winds up setting up a deal with this producer in Lee Donowitz. And so you're thinking, okay, this is how things are going to go. Stuff is going to go off without a hitch, right? Of course it's not, though. There's going to be complications, and there's going to be a lot of other things that are going to get in the way of Clarence and Alabama's happy ending. And one of those things is this mob boss named Vincenzo, who winds up tracking down Clarence's father and winds up interrogating him. And because Clarence's father doesn't want to give away his son, uh, he winds up dying at the hands of Vincenzo. But Vincenzo ultimately finds the location of Alabama and Clarence anyway, because there's a note on the refrigerator door. And so now, unbeknownst to Clarence and Alabama, now they have a target on their back, which is in the form of this this mob hit. So these mob enforcers are now on their way. And then while that's all going on, Elliot gets busted for cocaine possession. So now he is roped into something with the police. And so the police are putting a wire on him and they're trying to set him up for a sting operation on his boss, Donowitz. And it culminates in this standoff scene, which is really insane, where the cops bust in the door as soon as they see that Donowitz is getting ready to buy the drugs, and of course, Clarence and Alabama and his friend Dick, they're also there too, as well as Elliot, and the cops are ready to make the bust. But then Donowitz's heavies, they hate cops, so they're holding them at gunpoint, and it's this standoff. And then the mob enforcers show up, and then everyone just goes down. Everyone gets shot. The only survivors wind up being uh, um, Clarence in Alabama. And I know that prior to a lot of all of this too, there was definitely other really tense and um, thrilling moments, like the confrontation between Alabama and Virgil, which is harrowing, just violent, and just incredibly visceral. And a lot of the scenes in this, when it comes to the shootouts, the hand-to-hand combat, the various different physical confrontations between characters, it's some very visceral stuff. Like it definitely makes your stomach churn a little bit, especially if you watch the director's cut, which is even more violent than the theatrical version. Uh, it's very bloody. It's very brutal. And just when you think like, oh, it's gonna be another ending where it's sad and it's tragic, where Alabama winds up losing the love of her life, but she gets the money and she's able to start a new life. No, it actually ends with them surviving, with Clarence surviving a, a shot to his face, and him and Alabama wind up going to Cancun, and they have a family, and they live happily ever after. And I love that ending. And Tony Scott is the reason why we have that ending, because that's not how Tarantino initially wrote the film. Tarantino didn't really have the fairy tale vibe with it. Like there were some elements of that with the love story and everything, but he was not really necessarily someone who was really taking that approach with this script. So that's something that Tony Scott brought to the film, and Tony Scott is the one that really was instrumental for the ending that wound up in the finished film, because he just really grew to love the two kids, the two leads, Clarence and Alabama, and he wanted them to make it out. And I think that was definitely the right choice. And even Tarantino himself agrees with that, because the original ending sucks. It really does. It's an edgelord ending that doesn't fit the tone of the movie. It deals with Clarence dying, and it kind of insinuates in some way that he was used by Alabama so she could get the money. That he was just a sap and a pawn, and I hated that. And it really just undermines the entire love story, and really the heart of the film. And there's some really cringe narration and try hard bullshit with her almost committing suicide before she ultimately decides to, hitch a ride, with some hitchhiking and put her thumb out. And I was just like, yeah, that's not good. I don't like that at all. Um I'm really glad that Tony Scott put his foot down. It was like, "Nah, I'm gonna shoot that ending, but I'm also gonna shoot the ending that I want, and then when I do the edit, I'm gonna make, my decision." And he decided to go with the happier ending, and the film is so much better for it. Now, as good as this film is when it comes to the dialogue, when it comes to the love story, when it comes to the action, when it is there, when it comes to it's a dark comedy, which is genuinely funny despite it being kind of demented at points, it's still a script and an overall film that could have been even better, which I know it sounds kind of crazy, but hear me out here. The character of Vincenzo that Christopher Walken plays, he just kills every scene that he's in, and he's barely even in the movie. But it seems like he's supposed to be a pretty big deal, and then after a certain point, he just disappears, and that really baffles me. I don't know why that character was not involved with the plot more. I don't know why there wasn't a final confrontation between him, Alabama, and Clarence by the end of the movie. That felt like that was a huge missed opportunity to me. So that was honestly one of the few things about it, other than the kind of muddled reason why Clarence stole the Coke to begin with, that I felt definitely could have been done better by Tarantino. But other than that, I think Tarantino did a really good job writing this screenplay. Now, as good as the script is, as good as the direction is for True Romance, the cast is definitely something that really puts it over the edge or over the top. Because you have Christian Slater as Clarence, who, in my opinion, was just perfect casting. He plays this kind of dopey guy really well, but also plays a guy who could genuinely hold his own in a fight or a shootout. And he shows a lot of those nuances with his performance in this. But he also shows a little psychotic edge to his character too, which I felt was really nice to see in terms of seeing Christian Slater trying to flex a little more of his acting muscles here, showing how unhinged he can be, like that scene in the elevator with Elliot where he just flips out on him. That was genuinely, in my opinion, pretty intimidating and kind of and hard to watch because he snaps so believably. And the scenes where he's talking to himself and communicating with this hallucination of Elvis. Uh, there is some really a good acting here in this by Christian Slater, and he had just brilliant chemistry as well with Patricia Arquette, who was amazing as Alabama. This is easily one of her best performances. You could argue that it could be her best. But she has a lot of really good performances throughout her career, though. But this is definitely way up there. This is a character that I think, with a lesser actress, it could have just come across as something that was a little corny, or a character that just came across as a dumb bimbo. But the way that she played it, there was a certain sadness to her character. There was a certain element to her character that made you sympathize with her, and you really started to ultimately root for her and Clarence, and you wanted them to not only stay together but to find that happy ending, despite how unrealistic it is, considering all of the shit that they ultimately wind up in throughout the film. And this film definitely would not be anywhere near as good as it is without Patricia Arquette. Like, she is just mesmerizing in this. Uh, she is a forest fire. You know, she's a four alarm fire for sure. When it comes to her performance and the way that she handled this particular character in Alabama. And the rest of the cast is equally as great. I mean, you got Dennis Hopper, who plays Clarence's father in a rare good guy role. Like that was really nice to see, and it shows Hopper's range as an actor. Val Kilmer as Elvis, the mentor, the hallucination in Clarence's head. Gary Oldman as Drexel, this white guy who really wants to be black and goes as far as to having dreadlocks and speaking in Ebonics, and it's such a whacked out, wild, crazy ass performance by Gary Oldman, but I loved every minute of it. You got Brad Pitt as Floyd, Dick's roommate, who's a stoner. Christopher Walken as Vincenzo, who is just vicious and vile and just so fucking good in this. Why did we not get more of this character? Why did we not get more of him? He does the best that he can with the few scenes that he has, to the point where he almost steals the movie. But man, I wanted to see more of this performance because it was so good. Samuel L. Jackson plays Big Don, who has a fun little exchange with Gary Oldman in this movie about eating pussy. You've got Bronson Pinchot, who plays Elliot Blitzer. Michael Rappaport, who plays Dick Ritchie. Both of those actors do some good work when it comes to their characters. Saul Rubinek does his best Joel Silver impression, plays an asshole producer to a T as Lee Donowitz. Um, and then, of course, you got James Gandolfini as Virgil. This is the proto Tony Soprano. Like, you can definitely see what David Chase and other people saw in Gandolfini and his performance in this movie as to why that was really one of the integral reasons why they cast him as Tony Soprano in The Sopranos. He was just absolutely intimidating as hell in this. Just a brutal character, but it was a great performance. And you got Chris Penn and Tom Sizemore, who played the two detectives. Even got some lesser known character actors who do some good work, like Paul Ben Victor as Luca. Eric Allen Kramer plays Boris Thor from the Trial of the Incredible Hulk movie from back in the 80s. Or was it the Return of the Incredible Hulk? I think it was. I no, yeah, the Trial, that was a different one. That one was with Daredevil. So the Return of the Incredible Hulk, the first Incredible Hulk TV movie from the 80s with Bill Bixby. So yeah, this cast is amazing. This is honestly one of the best casts out there in terms of just pound for pound talent. And the film also features some slick looking cinematography by Jeffrey L. Kimball, some nice editing by Michael Tronick and Christian Wagner, and a really unique score by Hans Zimmer that doesn't sound like a lot of his other scores. It's more upbeat, it's more offbeat at points, and quirky, almost as if it's inspired by the work of Carter Burwell from something like Raising Arizona. And I think it actually works really well with the movie. I know people pointed out they think it's a poor fit. I disagree. I think the score really fits quite well with the film because it is, in a lot of ways, in essence, a fairy tale. So this more upbeat, xylophone heavy score, I think that actually fits with the movie, and it's a really catchy work of music as well, and it's composed really efficiently. Now, the film also features some other songs in the soundtrack, and there's some really good stuff. There's a song by Aerosmith, song by Soundgarden. There's definitely picks some nice cuts, so to speak, when it comes to the selected tracks for the soundtrack. And I think it's still a pretty tightly paced film, despite the fact that it's almost 2 hours. I never really felt that it was that dull. I didn't feel it really slowed down that much. It's still a film that, to me personally, even though I've seen it at least a handful of times, it still is equally as engaging and entertaining each time that I watch it because I just love this cast. I love Tony Scott's direction, and I really like the script. I like how it's an old school kind of it's a love story. You know, it's a take on an old kind of fairy tale where two people fall in love, but it's got this 90s crime drama spin on it. So, yeah, I cannot sing enough praises for this movie, to be honest. It's definitely one of my favorites when it comes to the genre, one of my favorite Tony Scott films. And if you're a fan of this movie, you should definitely check it out on 4K. Or just grab the regular Blu-ray special edition from Arrow Video because this is definitely the definitive edition to get for this movie. Because not only do you get both cuts of the film, which is really nice, because for a long time you only got the director's cut, which I don't mind because it is definitely a little more violent. It has even more of an edge to it. But I always kind of tend to watch theatrical cuts most of the time. But I hadn't seen the theatrical cut in forever because it was never on a lot of the releases that I found of the movie. So it's really nice to have the theatrical cut on here as well as the director's cut. And there's just a ton of features. Ports over a lot of a lot of the features. I think all of the same features from the previous releases, and has some new features as well. So yeah, that's my thoughts on True Romance. And until next time, I'll see you later. See ya.